Okay, so continuation of chapter 2 for the subject church financial management. What information should be covered by the internal financial reporting process? So this is for internal financial reporting. So again, to aid in the decision making of the management. Okay, so it would be used whenever the church or the organization is faced with a certain situation that might require coming up with a certain solution or resolution to improve the solution or maybe solve a problem or a challenge or an issue. Okay, so there are key questions here provided, about 27 of them, but I'm only going to, you know, uh, provide examples on a few of them to give you an idea on, certain situations that would require the management to make decisions financially. Okay. First one is the church's current liquidity sound or strong? How do we know? So when it comes to church liquidity, again, it's about the availability of cash to be used for the current operations of the organization, or the ability of the organization to convert its non-cash assets into cash. Okay, because cash is very important, very essential in paying the actual operation of an organization, paying off the debts, paying their suppliers. Whenever they buy something, they would need cash to pay for the utilities regularly, monthly, and of course to pay the salaries and wages of the workers. Okay, so sorry. How does the church decide or determine if it's sound or strong? So for the most part, they must at least have, enough cash for the next month's operation. Okay. If you're going to compare it to personal finance, it's the equivalent of having an emergency fund. For personal finance, it's uh, the suggest the suggested emergency fund is to have at least 3 months worth of salary, so that in case you find yourself without a job, you have that much allowance to look for another job or another source of income. Okay, in the case of churches, so they should at least have 1, 2, or 3 months worth of available cash to suffice for their operations. Okay. For example, March 2020, suddenly there are lockdowns, so the members are unable to give. Majority of the members are unable to come to church to give their contributions, but in such a situation, the church should have enough cash to tide them through the next few months, okay, while we're still, observing the situation and if it's going to improve, okay. Second question is the trending in the church's liquidity improving or declining? So, as much as possible, again, the church should keep the amount of cash available for a month or so, or maybe a month or two would be enough for a small organization. But over the years, of course, as they grow, as they become bigger, or as they become more experienced in operating a church, then the liquidity should improve. Okay, so they should accumulate enough cash at any given point in time to tie them through a few months in the future. Okay. Next, what is the current balance for cash and other liquid assets? What is the balance net of donor restricted and designated amounts? Okay, provide details. So, for example, on the financial statement, we can see that the church has a lot of cash. Okay, but you have to consider, is this amount unrestricted, meaning it can be used for any purpose for operations of the church, or is this restricted because it was given by a donor and the donor imposed certain restrictions on the donation? So in that case, you have to, separate the cash into two classifications, unrestricted, and then you have your restricted. Okay. When it comes to liquidity, you can only look at the unrestricted cash balance. Okay. So sometimes you have to, ask questions regarding a certain item. Is this it? Is there a breakdown for this item? Are there differences? So things like that. Okay, and then next you have issues about payables. Are they paid on time? How much cash are used for the operating expenses? So things like that. Is the church paying all of its bills on time? Does it have any trouble in recent weeks meeting its cash flow demands? Okay, so most of these are regarding liquidity or financial condition. Okay, and then these are somewhat concerning. Has the church dipped into donor restricted or designated cash or investment balances in order to fund operations at any point during the last year? If yes, elaborate. So, for example, the operating fund or the general fund is not enough already. It has been depleted over a few months, and the church finds itself having no more operating fund. Okay, and then but they do have a separate fund for building, for missions, for vehicles, for the Bible school. Okay, so although the church is expecting to, of course, receive contributions from their members in the coming months, currently they don't have enough cash already for, let's say, they need to pay off the church workers already, but they don't have enough cash for that. So they might, what you call that, borrow certain funds from, let's say, the vehicle fund, since the church is not planning to buy a vehicle in the next year or so. So they might, use it temporarily for the operations. And then when they receive the contributions from the members and they have enough or excess for the operations, they would return or pay back the borrowed money from the vehicle fund. Okay, so it's not an ideal situation. Sometimes it would be very concerning already, because as much as possible you'd like to use the funds for their, specific purposes. Okay, you don't want to form a habit or to form a, what do you call that, a habit. Okay, you don't want to normalize, borrowing money from different funds or mixing the funds from, different purposes. So it's not a good practice. So as much as possible, try to ensure that you have enough cash for your operations. Okay, and then you have other concerns here, about the debt or borrowings. You have per capita giving. How much is the giving on average by one person? Okay, and then expenditures. Do we comply with the budget, or have we been recalibrating the budgets often? What do you call that? Reallocating the budgets from one item to another. Okay, and then are expenditures increasing or decreasing? Is there an explanation on why that is the case? Okay, are appropriate approval process in place for all expenditures? Are we following the policy, or are they not strictly implemented? So again, that might be a cause for concern. So that's that. And then you have your rating here. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would church leadership rate the church's current financial condition? Explain the basis for the rating. Okay. So these are, some situations which would require internal financial reporting to aid the management in their decision making. Okay. Next, church leaders shouldn't be intimidated. So, of course, it's not required for them to have an extensive knowledge of accounting, but for the most part, they are assumed to have a basic understanding of, understanding the financial reports. Okay, and us on the accounting side, yes, we try to provide statements that would be easy to understand even by people without accounting knowledge. And of course, we try to explain if we are asked to explain certain items or certain information on the financial statements. Okay, so in the church management, sorry, you have the board of trustees, right? And again, board of trustees, you have the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and auditor. So those are the five required positions. Um, it would be assumed that the treasurer and the auditor are both knowledgeable in accounting, and as a governing body, the board of trustees, so the president, the others may simply, ask the treasurer and the auditor for anything related to the finances of the church, unless of course they are committing fraud and hiding something. So that would be tricky. Okay, but for the most part, the reason why there are, different positions in the company is to ensure that everyone is checking. Uh, well, for the president at least, and the president must ensure that each position, each personnel is, doing their job properly. Okay. Um, Effective internal financial reporting is always based on the idea that meaningful, usable, relevant, and timely information is provided to decision makers in a format they can easily understand. Okay, so they would need the financial information. Um, you know, they need the information to make well-informed decisions. Okay, because a decision might change depending on the available information that they have. Okay, so if the information, garbage input, garbage output, so you have to make sure that the basis of the decision are, accurate, timely, and relevant, right? Reporting to people charged with financial oversight. Internally, it would be the auditor or maybe the president. They have to ensure that the accounting department or finance department are doing their job properly. But for external purposes, the SEC, they would require audited financial statements, and these AFS must be conducted by an external auditor. So churches or organizations would have to engage the services of an external auditor. Okay, what an external auditor does is that, of course, they check whether the recording of the financial transactions are proper, if they use the proper accounts, if the classifications of the transactions are in accordance with the accounting standards, if no, errors were committed, if no fraudulent activities were present in the recording process or in the preparation of the financial reports, nothing suspicious, that would make the auditor think that there are fraud being committed. So there is that. Okay. So the main point for the external audit is to ensure that no, what do you call it? No fraud or errors or incorrect application of standards were committed. Okay, so essentially proper recording. All right, and then we have church accounting definitions, but I'm going to pause again because it's already 14 minutes. Have to make sure that everything is recorded.